help, 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 help.
Okay. Good afternoon. Namaste. Jai Shri Krishna. It gives me great pleasure in welcoming everybody here. We are here today to celebrate the life of Vrajlalbhai. A special word of welcome to Karunaben, Prabha, Nitesh, Priya, Poonam, Jayesh, not Jayesh, Bhavesh, and his lovely wife, new wife. He's just married a couple of months, I think. And Viresh is here as well, of course. And also a special welcome to everybody here, friends, family, and a special welcome to Frija's friends and classmates of 53 years ago and more, in fact. We'll come to that part later on, but they are here and I will introduce you to them once I start with my speech. I'm just welcoming you now. At this stage, I'd like to call our priest, Gopal Bhai Vyas, to open up with a prayer, and I'll also give him permission to speak on Vrajlalbhai as well. Thank you.
Namaste, Jai Shri Krishna. I would like to call upon Nitesh Bhai, Priya Ben, Poonam Ben, Bhavesh Bhai to come here and light the Divo first. Let's put the garland, light the Divo. Om asatyo mahethi Prabhu param satye tulai ja Una andhare thi Prabhu param teje tulai ja હું હીણો છું તો પ્રભુ તું દર્શન ના દાન દઈ જા ઓમ અસતો મામ સદ્ગમય તમસો મામ જ્યોતિર્ગમય મૃત્યોર્મામૃતમ ગમય ઓમ ભદ્રમ કર્ણેभिः શૃણુયામ દેવામ भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवाग्ंशस्तनूभिर्व्यशेमहि देवहितं जदायु शतमिन्दुशरद अन्ति देवानो जत्रानश्चक्रजरसन्तनूनां हरिः ॐ शान्तिः 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 Namaste, Jai Shri Krishna. Today is the day we remember our beloved Vrajlalbhai Hari. When we talk about the Vrajlalbhai Hari, we're going to start to understanding the name, his name alone. His name called the Vraj and Lal. So Vraj Bhumi, it called the Vraj Bhumi in India. Gokul, Mathura, Vrindavan, Barsana, that entire area is known as a Vraj Bhumi. Vraja, Raj, Raj means ke dhud, kana, and a va. Every single dhud in a kanma, Bhagwan Sri Krishna stays in that region called the Vraj Bhumi. And whoever is passed in that region, they reach to the Vaikuntha Dham. Lal, son of the Vraj. That is called the Vaikuntha. Now, when we understand the Vrajlalbhai himself, each and every second, each and every moment in his life is ocean of the knowledge. Every single single second, whenever we say knowledge, whenever we meet, whenever we see him, he share his knowledge. And beauty part I know is wherever he travels, because he likes travels. And every single travel when he does, the first thing first he look the books. And then after when he look the books and then when he come from the US or other country, he said, come here, I want to show you something. I said, okay. Oh, look, this book, ne? It's good for the Sunday morning children. I'll make the copy for you. And then you put it in the mandir. I says, no problem, we'll do it. Not long ago, couple of months, I think maybe some last year sometime, I visited to Vrajlalbhai for something. And then I think Punamben was there also. And he said, let's go. I go, where are we going to go? He said, go. And he took us library. And his library means that all, that you can't even find that kind of the books in these days. That is called the knowledge. We talk about the ocean. In the ocean, as you go deep, you find all, you find all other things. So more you go deep in Vrajlalbhai, you find more and more wisdom and knowledge. And that knowledge makes you to think, okay, bhai, the world is not what you think. World is far bigger than what exactly it is. And that is why I will say we are the one, few of them, fortunate humans, people, where we had a time and also we had opportunity to sit with him and share that entire knowledge. Not only you can ask any subject, any subject. But Bhagavad Gita was one of his favorite subject. I know. And every time he speaks about the Bhagavad Gita, and one day even I told him, I said, you know what, Vajubhai, one day, that time it was lockdown. So I say, you know what, Vajubhai, I'm doing the online, this weekly show. I will call you in one of the day and give me a talk about the Bhagavad Gita. He says, yeah, definitely I'll give it. But that day didn't come. But anyway, but his message of the life, which I mentioned many times, and I'm repeating again, his message of the life is Bhagavad Gita. He always lived with the Bhagavad Gita's principles. And that is why when I mention the name, that name means that name alone tells that soul is into the Vaikuntha Dham. That Vaikuntha Dham, when I mention about the Vaikuntha Dham means in the place where every single soul feel peace and joy and happy. And no matter how stressful he is, no matter how difficult time he goes through, But when he comes to front of us, he don't show that stress and difficulties front of anybody. And that is called leadership. It is called the person who live with the real message of the Bhagavad Gita. I can speak on and on, but we have a limited time and we have a whole galaxy of the speakers which are going to share all this them information. Thank you, family. Whatever the family has done up to now for Islamic society. In fact, we are thankful to Vrajlalbhai also. Whatever he has done lots for us. This we cannot even describe it. And thank you to accepting our proposals and coming here and having this service with us. Jai Shri Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gopalbhai. By the way, this memorial is under the auspices of this London Hindu Society. I also haven't completed my welcomings yet. I'd like to welcome also, we have some visitors from out of town. I have a cousin here, Gunanbhai Jaga, and his evergreen wife from Cape Town. They also happen to be Roshni Harris' in-laws. Then I also have another cousin here, but he's from Johannesburg, Bhupendrabhai Renshaw, who's a very close family friend of the Harris for many, many decades. Okay, having said that, I'm going to just speak very briefly. I'm going to give snatches here and there. And whatever I say, it's in relation to Vrajlalbhai and the family. And what I'm saying is actually something about his character, personality, what he does, what he didn't do, and stuff like that. But before that, I also have just one letter to read from my personal friend, as well as the Harris friend, Rashmi Kuvaji from Cape Town. And he sent this to me last night. I thank you for the invitation to celebrate the beautiful life of Vrajlalbhai Harris' life. On behalf of myself and my family, I wish to pay my condolences to the family, especially Karunaben and children, the strength and tenacity to overcome this huge loss, which came as such a shock and so suddenly. Vrajlal's grandfather, Lalubhai Hari, my grandfather, Nagarbai Kuvaji, and Ranchod by Givala, whose son is Manilal Ranchod, all hail from the village of Undach, which is a few kilometers from Bulamoria. Vrajlalbhai will be remembered for sponsoring a library in Undach, that's in India, of course, in honor of his parents and grandparents, which will be remembered in perpetuity. Vrajlalbhai was an astute businessman whose modern printing press stood out proudly as one of the best in the country. His progressive thinking contributed to the success of the business. Despite his very busy schedule, he made the time to serve the community. His involvement in the South African Kshatriya Mahasabha dates back to 1979, where he served as the treasurer of the Educational Trust for many a decade. My fervent prayer that his soul rests in eternal peace in the land of Nirvana. Kind regards, Rashmi Kuvarji. Okay, my turn now. I've broken up my talk about him in about 4 to 5 phases. Each phase will be about half an hour, so there'll be 2.5 hours for myself. Okay, I start with the Harry printers started approximately 92, 93 years ago in East London, but not commercially. The grandfather, that is Al Harry, he started in the backyard, in the back room. I remember as a youngster visiting there often, and he started, of course, it was basically in the Gujarati language. It was all religious works, pamphlets, booklets, poems, and all that kind of stuff. But I remember not only the grandparents. As a youngster, I remember Vrajlal's great-grandfather used to often come to our house in Short Street, North End, to visit my grandfather. So our relationship extends more than 93 years. Our family friendship started, I calculated, just over 100 years ago. Yeah, that's correct. You heard me right. Over 100 years. There was a chapter on North End, which Kenny Rangasamy wrote, and he asked me to write a chapter. And I discussed various topics in that chapter. And there's one called the Harry family, the history of the Harry family. And it is mentioned there that they also, before coming to East London, they were in Ellerville North. But I also picked up later on that another little town was missed out in that write-up. And they were actually in Adelaide, in the Eastern Cape, which is about, 1.5 hours or 2 hours from here. So they actually were in business, in the shoe business, in Adelaide before coming to East London as well. Now the second phase, that's not even half an hour. But anyway, we move to the second phase. I completed my high school studies at John Bissika High School in East London. And then 53 years ago, I went there to teach at John Bissika High. And when I went to Bissika to start teaching my career, they started my career at Bissika. Vrajlal was in standard 9, which is today called grade 11. And I took them over to matric the following year. So basically, that was my first matric class that I taught a year after that. And I'm pleased to say that we have some of his classmates here today. And in fact, I would like them to come to the front so I can introduce them. They're feeling shy now. They were actually a class of 20, small for today's standards, especially in the so-called non-white schools. Now they're like 40 and 50. They were 20 with, there were 17 only in the English medium class. We also had an Afrikaans medium class. And the Afrikaans medium class was 3 only, so it gave us a total of 20. And today, I think out of the 20, 13 survived. There are only 13 survivors up to now. Jaintibai Jiva, of course, is one of them. Belinda was a Kaiser. She's a Mrs. Gregory now. Gurji Daji, and she, of course, is Mrs. Trimley now. Her husband is right behind her at all times. This is Felicity. She was Boaters those days. She's Mrs. Frey now. And Hassan Mohammed. Okay. Thanks a lot. Jainti just told me a moment ago that I'm the only surviving teacher that took them in matric. But then I told him I had an advantage because the other teachers were already there and older. So I was new there. So that's why maybe I'm still surviving. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, you know, Vrajlal was a bright guy at school. Unassuming. In that year in matric, he was the only person that gave me a distinction. He passed with a distinction in my subject. And let me tell you, and I'll debate this with anybody after this thing. It was 10 times more difficult those days, 53 years ago, to get a distinction than today. It's coming out like in a machine, manufactured. No. And I'm prepared to tell you why and what and all that later on. So he was a brilliant student, there's no doubt about that. I think his favorite teacher that time, no, not me, it was an English teacher, Mrs. Buchner. And I know Mrs. Mrs. Frey is smiling, and I know she's smiling. Okay, we went on excursions together and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Right. Yeah. His answers were so good that I wondered when I looked at my memo is the answer sheet. So I thought, oh, how did this guy steal my memo? His answer was so perfect. No, he had a photographic memory. Just like another chap I remember, Roshan Aubrey, who's unable to make it today. Those guys had photographic memories, really. The answers were perfect. Then after 25 years of leaving matric, they had a reunion at the hotel in Quigley. And I was there. We were just 3 teachers at that time of their old teachers. It was a memorable occasion. And at that occasion, Fridge actually printed a book. I got it at home. I showed it to my visitor last night, in fact. With each one's story there, each of them had to say what they did over the years and stuff like that. So that's basically a good, something to keep for life, memory. Then that's 25 years after matric. Then 50 years after matric, that's now 25 years later, which was January 2020. I got a call from Vrajlalbhai, and he said, man, I must come. He's having a get-together, a reunion, in fact, at his flat at the Kenaway. So I said, man, unfortunately, I won't make it because I'm in Johannesburg at this moment in time. So naturally, I missed that. And I think because of that, the next day, I got a call from Ashok Chauhan. Now, Ashok Chauhan is the brother-in-law of Jack Dyer and Bowen Dyer and those people from Willits Road, North End those days. And he lives in Montreal at the moment for many years. So he phones me, and I was still in Joburg, naturally. That was Saturday. He said, look, we missed you last night at this function, so we're going to meet at Gracia. So 4 couples met at Gracia, and we had a beautiful evening, reminiscing and so on. By 3rd phase already. A few years, maybe 9 years ago, I got a call from Vrajlalbhai, and he said I must come to the factory at a certain time one morning. So I went to sit down, and he said, man, he's got a job for me. And this work entailed in the examination section. Now, the Harry printers printed the entire Eastern Cape's final exam papers, ranging from primary level, because there are a few subjects in primary school that are external papers. And it goes right up to matric level. So my job basically, what happens is the guys from Bishu come, they write off, they sign off. That means it's final. So I only check the stuff after they've signed off. And my job was to go through all the subjects, and there are lots of subjects, from primary right to matric, and check the answers, also memo sheets. And I found many, many mistakes after they've signed it off, which means it's a final thing. Then I had to report to Bisho, of course. They used to come to the factory. They also had an office at Harry's, and then they would make the corrections on the computer, and then they would print the stuff out. So that was quite a demanding task, and I did it for something like 5 years. I was employed basically for 2 months in the year exam period, which was basically September, October, maybe part of November. And there's top security there, and absolutely great. And they've been doing it for years, and I can, without a shadow of doubt, tell you that at no stage was there ever a leakage in all the years of any matric paper from there. There were leakages, but it happened afterwards from the department itself, at the district office or whatever. But they've got an absolute clean record as far as that goes. Vrajlalbhai never actually treated me as an employee. I was like family to him. Whenever Karuna and he happened to walk through the exam section, they wouldn't pass my office without coming there just to say hello, and then they would carry on, of course. Also, I was privileged there because I didn't have to clock in and clock out like these other guys here. And then, of course, the Friday was a special day. You don't have a lunch break. So naturally, you go home early on that day. But I was the only one privileged to go home, have lunch, and come back, and still go home early. Okay. And also remember, 1 year, Peter, I think you said it's okay. I had to go to King Williamstown to either Dale College, and I think it was Kingsbridge Girls High, to go give my talk on the government pension fund to the teachers. So I left early in the morning and I came about 10, 11 o'clock back, but that wasn't the issue with them. They were quite happy with me to do that in their time. Then we come to the next phase. Islam and Hindu society. About 7 years ago, I think, I and two of my friends decided that we need to bring in the youth to run this Islam and Hindu society, because the youth always got progressive ideas. And I had a couple of meetings over spanning about 3 months at my house, and we identified young people to take over the running of the society. In fact, one of the persons who had helped me was Dalubai Bika. The other one was Prakash Pema. He's in Joburg now. And we identified these people. And since they took over, I'm telling you, they've changed the whole complexion of the story. These guys come with laptops, show us on the screen all the financial stories and all that. So they jacked up and they're doing very well. Then also, at the same time, at that AGM, we had to replace some of the trustees. So one evening, I phoned the Harry residents. Karuna picked up the phone and I said, I want to speak to Vrajlalbhai. So she said, he's in bed with flu. So I said, no problem. I'll phone some other night. But she said, no, he'll speak to you. So I spoke to him and I said, look, I didn't have a hope in hell because that man is so busy. I said, man, I want you to be a trustee as well. And he immediately agreed, to my delight. He says, yeah, I would like to be there because I don't want the older folk to mess around with the young people that's coming in there. And he joined immediately, and he was a trustee right until now. And we really valued his input as a trustee, his contribution in every way, even financially and in every other aspects, his wisdom. He was also the auditor of this London Hindu Society. There were 2 auditors, and he was one of them every year for many, many years. Coming to an end now, it looks like it. Early this year, Rachel phoned me and he asked me, what time will I be at home? He wants to come and visit me because he's clearing his library here in Braylen. He's moving to this new house in Bunkers Hill. So I said, okay, I'm free that such and such a time. Then he didn't come. So then he phoned a few days later to apologize. I said, fine. He said, okay, we set another date. He set another date. And before that date arrived, he said, man, Naina's coming from Joburg with the grandkids, so to spend time with grandkids. And of course, he was a great family man. So we put that off, and then it just slipped away, the whole thing, forgotten. And didn't bother me, of course. So last Tuesday, I think I went to the Harry family for the service. And then Naina brought me an envelope that looks something like this, identical to this, and gave it to me. And that was the book that he had promised me. That book which I have here is actually for, so Naina gave me two envelopes, one for myself and one for the Trish and the Ramu family. Now, Trish is the wife and widow of Morris Ramu, who was in his class. And the title of this book is Option B. Option B. So it's especially it's got a lot to do with motivation, about grieving, and that sort of thing. So I brought this book to hand it over to Mrs. Ramu here today, in fact. Uh, and also attached in that book, he had actually typed a letter, very, very sincere letter addressed personally to me, and I'm sure he's done the same for Trish in that book as well. And of course, and he refers to certain pages in the book, page number 123 or whatever, and what it's about. And we should, if we don't read the whole book, we must at least read those particular pages. He was so precise, this man. And all I want to say now is, Karuna, you know that I don't know, whatever support you need, I'm here for you at all times. And I must just mention that I attended the memorial yesterday at the factory. And I lost count of the number of employees that spoke, and they spoke from the heart and the sincerity about the man. They spoke about the boss they had, as opposed to bossing. He wasn't a bossing, he was a employer who had everyone's welfare at heart. How they spoke about how they started from the bottom level and he pushed them up to the top level and encouraged them when he saw potential in an employee. He actually nurtured that employee and brought them to where they are today. I think with that I will conclude. I'm the only one not limited to time. The others are all. I'm just joking. Now we have two unbelievable characters. We have Peter Trimley here, right next to me here, and next to him is Deepak Mahabir. Peter is absolutely unique. I've never come across a person with such dedication and loyalty to the Harry family. Do you know Peter's working there at Harry since he left school? That's over 50 years. Because if you work, I hope you don't mind me saying, he had a birthday on Wednesday, he was 74. 74. And he's still going strong. Looks like a 50-year-old. Peter's doing very well, and I'm sure the Harry family appreciate really you two guys. And the Deepak, of course, he was a former teacher at one stage, and then he went to HR there at Harry's. But he's also an all-round, he can just drop anything and do any other responsibility there, whether it's exam section or what section, it doesn't matter. So he's so versatile as well. So it's my pleasure in calling Peter to say just a few words, please.
Thanks. Hi, afternoon, everybody, and colleagues, friends, and family. It's truly a joy and a pleasure to be here this afternoon. And it's always good to give thanks as well. And I think that is why I'm here. This afternoon is to give thanks to Mr. Harry, to Fridge. Well, I used to call him Mr. V, but I always respected him as my boss. He was my boss, and as a friend, and very closely as a brother as well. That who Mr. V was to me. We grew very close. Many trips we went overseas, business trips. And Fritz would always teach me, like Mr. Kando said, he was a very clever man. And that you can't take away from the guy. Fritz was exceptionally clever. And many business trips, he always used to say to me, you know, Peter, you must always associate with people who can build you. People who can make an impact on your life. And don't waste your time and effort where, you know, you're just wandering and life just carries on. And those are words like the Indian minister said earlier. It's very, very words that touches your life, as it were. And that was Fritz. You know, I could just go on and on and on and say so many things. Even when we went to business places locally, it would always be encouraging and always be something where you'd come back and learn. And this he did because we needed to build our business. And it's because of Mr. Harry where I am today that I could get my children to school, got married to Kerji, started a family, children at school, educated the children. That was all out of Harry's printers, and Kerji worked at Frey Hospital. So this is where we built our family, was out of Harry's printers. And I'm very, very grateful to the Harry family for that, because I don't think I would have got many opportunities during that era and time in our country. It wasn't easy. But yet, I had the opportunity. Mohan Bhai, or we used to call him Emma, he actually gave me the job. And the late Bowen, Jaram, Bowen actually got me the job at Harry's, and I've been there ever since. And I can also say thank you to Bowen, because he was a part of it. And Fritz was one of those people, he could see beyond your capabilities. He gave you an opportunity. Maybe you wouldn't think so, but he was able to look beyond what you could actually do. And he would give you that opportunity. And once you've proved it to him, he would even help you along the way. And you do whatever he can to build people. And so, as it went on, when Fritz took over the business, he grew it very rapidly when we were in Kimberley Road. And so we hired more people. And in that, Fritz started growing families. It wasn't individuals then. It was families, because we had a husband and wife team working together. We may would have had a guy and his son working for us. And this is where Fritz was very special. And so was the Harry family as well, because, to grow a family is not easy. And there were many families at our factory that Fritz actually grew. Took care of them, educated their children, looked after the families. And that is something very special. In all the years that I was with Fritz, and that's 56 years I was there, Fritz never fired anybody. Not in 56 years did the man fire anybody. And that's very, very unique. And the people that worked for us were very dedicated people. They committed themselves. And so you'd ask the question, but why did they work there for such a long period of time? And it's very simple, because Fritz was a caring person. He was a compassionate person. He had, I would term it a weakness. And this was his kindness. Because he would always, it doesn't matter who it was, if they had to come to Fritz and whatever the problem, he would, help them in whatever way, whether it be knowledge or material things in life or whatever it was. Fritz would be there for people. And that was very, very special as well, because, being a businessman, you're always too busy to take time out of your day to listen maybe to staff or to people who would come and visit or so. And I can truly say that Fritz has made an impact on lots of people's lives. I mean, there are many, many people. I mean, as we can see today, our people here, Fritz must have somewhere made an impact on your life. I mean, that is why we are here today, is to say thank you to Fritz for the time that he spent with us and the time that he helped us. And Fritz has been called to a higher service, as it were. And I mean, wherever he is, I know for a fact that Fritz still cares about the people at work, the people who were in close contact with him, because that is the person that Fritz was. And I will forever be grateful to Mr. V, as it were, for the time that I had spent with him, because it was fruitful, it was encouraging, and he helped me in a lot of things. And I want to say thank you very, very much for that. Thanks a lot, Mr. Gandhi.
Thanks, Peter, for sincere words about Rich. Spoke from the heart. Uh, I just asked him now because the arrangement we had was he was going to leave after the speech, talking about dedication. They're busy still printing the trial exam matric papers, and he's got to get back to job again. Anyway, he'll hang around for a while. He can dismiss himself whenever. Now we come to Deepak.
Good afternoon, everybody. Namaste to all. It's a privilege being here to be able to talk about Mr. Harry. And I think you as a community members, friends and family know him from one side. And it's also nice to hear what his staff thinks of him, the real Mr. Harry. And, the word a good man has a deep meaning when we talk about Mr. Harry. He was a good man. And I joined the company after I was a teacher, and I'm the group HR manager looking after people, but I do 1,000 other different things. For the only reason is that Ms. Harry said, Deepak, please help me with this, help me with that. Now, I treated him as my father. When the father asks the son to do something, you do it. You don't question it. So you do it. And that's how I saw Mr. Harry, as I call him. Now, you probably know him and you've been around him. He's always biting his fingers, deep in thought, his head down, always thinking. And that is mannerisms. And, his mind was always in overdrive. But one thing he did not forget was his staff, be it the lowest worker to the highest manager. And like Peter said, a lot of people at Harry Sprinter, staff members, started off as cleaners and they became managers. Why? Because he encouraged them, right? But he also knew that Mr. Harry himself cannot run an organization of that magnitude by his own action. So what he did was he brought up the people with him, and he sent many of us to different countries for conferences, to other better printers, bigger organizations to learn from, to better yourself. And I don't think there are many companies or maybe family-owned businesses that are able to do that, that want to do that. And that way he was very unselfish in his manner. And that we're always, grateful for. We are the people we are today, maybe because of those interactions. And maybe we grew so big because he allowed us to flourish. Mr. Harry, you take a lot of chances in business, and I'll tell him something, hey, Mr. Harry, but you're putting so much of effort into this project here, but there's no return on investment here, And you say, Deepak, there's nothing guaranteed in life, but you must take a chance. And that's a very, very powerful statement. And his persistence in business, his persistence and his attitude, his humbleness, the way he approached people, I think that was his biggest strength. And that is why I think he was very successful. And I wrote something, and I said to the staff memorial yesterday, and it is a short poem, and it flowed very easily because it is the truth. When you speak the truth, it flows easily. And something that will encompass maybe what Peter said, what I said. So this is to Mr. Harry. The sun is in my, I can do it this way here, sorry. How do we remember you? Walking down the passage with a finger in his mouth, head down, deep in thought for new prospects to scout. A quiet gaze during your factory walkabout, you encouraged, overlooked mistakes, but never spent time to shout. You are a humble visionary with a naughty side. We remember your jokes, of which our laughter we could not hide. We recall your quiet, confident demeanor, headstrong, heartstrong, and a respectful leader. A father, a selfless builder, cloaking a forgiving heart, always ready to hold you when things fell apart. He saw something in you which you did not see. He gave you opportunity to realize who you're meant to be. Compassionate, polite, and gentle by nature, surrounded with literature, books, pens, and paper. A champion of education to build a brighter future. You disarmed obstacles with empathetic maneuver. You left us so suddenly, and we do feel your absence. We have to soldier on to piece together the fragments. Now that your spirit is free, it is in each one of us, as in the Harry family. And I think that maybe summarizes what we thought of him, and that's true. You can ask probably any staff member, and he'll surely be missed. And we pray that the Harry family be blessed for generations to come, because they have helped generations, and they will be blessed. Thank you, people.
Thank you, Deepak, for those kind words. And we've learned, as we're going along, we're learning more and more about Vrajlal's character and his generosity and his entrepreneurship and so on. We now have a classmate of Vrajlal from high school days, John Basika, Jayanti by Jiva.
Dear family and friends gathered here today, I speak on behalf of the John Basika High School class of 1970. This is a sad day for us all. It is so much easier to mourn in silence. It takes away the worry of not being able to get your words out. But silence or not, one thing which I am sure we all appreciate today is being here all together, sharing in each other's silence and in each other's moments of thought for Fridge, who we loved as a friend. We will all have our own personal and special memories of the mark Fridge left in our hearts and in our lives. Fridge was such a strong person through and through. Fridge, the name invokes a number of very strong and special words. Loyalty, friendship, kindness, generosity, humility, intellectual, wisdom, humor, spiritual, family man, scholarly, studious, and bookworm. What we will remember will always be how in January 1959, the portly, diminutive, fragile Harry entered the lives of a select group of people, the matrics of 1970. He entered as silently and unobtrusively as he left on the 3rd of August 2022. In a major part of our primary school years, he was a shy, nervous individual who was relatively invisible. His social interactions were almost completely confined to an umbilical relation with his maternal cousin, Narendra Poxy Daya. Their conversations at interval time were dominated by an enthusiastic review of the traditional Wednesday evening Indian movie at Lal's Bioscope. We were enthralled by their vivid and detailed recollections. It was almost like watching the movie. In hindsight, it is probably a tribute to Poxy's artistic flair that later manifested itself in his work at Fridge's printing establishment. Then, suddenly in 1965, under the exciting and relentless tutelage of his teacher, Dudley Minnie, Fridge burst into prominence. He excelled in his scholastic achievements. His teacher demanded excellence, and Fridge responded with aplomb. The spark of 1965 burst into flame in 1966 when we entered John Bissika High School. Fridge read avidly and became an absolute fountain of knowledge of which we were the grateful beneficiaries. He shared thoughts and insights on a variety of current affairs and other topics with a lot of enthusiasm. We gleaned our detailed knowledge of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Vietnam War, the space race, and the 1968 US presidential campaign from Fridge. His enthusiastic support for the Democratic candidate Hubert Humphrey was emblazoned in huge white chalk letters on the front and back of his green school blazer. He accepted Richard Nixon's victory over Humphrey graciously and deftly avoided any further discussion on the topic. He continued to ply us with copies of Time, the National Geographic, Reader's Digest throughout our high school years. He tolerated pranks played on him with equanimity, blushing sometimes, but never becoming irritable or angry. On an occasion in the laboratory in 1970, Subbiya Naidu connected a running tube to a tap and put the other end in Fridge's pocket and opened the tap. Our science teacher, Mr. MacDonald, never even noticed the mirth on our faces, nor Fridge's acute discomfort. Yet Fridge had the graciousness to laugh it off. The class of 1970 were always pioneering, and Fridge was always in the thick of things when it came to organizing activities. We staged a memorable rendition of the Oscar Wilde play, The Importance of Being Earnest, at the Cambridge Methodist Church in 1969. It was produced by Anne Foster, with Fridge playing the part of the adorable, mischievous Right Reverend Canon Chasuble. The play and its prelude, a Bissika choir rendition of Guadiyama's Igitu, meaning let's be happy while we're young, under the direction of Aideen Spicer, was a timely reminder and well received. This was followed with a memorable class tour along the garden route to Cape Town, where we stayed as a happy family at the St. Mark's School in Athlone. Our accompanying teachers were Mr. Remenkandu and Mrs. Buchner, our English teacher. Our watermelon feast, in which we rubbed watermelon into each other's hair, culminated the tour. A classic unrehearsed photo on the last day of school, 29 November 1970, when we wrote geography, says it all. Fridge, Morris, and Ramesh agreed to come in their pajamas to write. And Fridge scored an A. The photo is at the back on the wall there. We've had several reunions amongst the locals, but the highlight was our 25th anniversary reunion at the King David Hotel in 1995. The years peeled away very quickly with limited contact, but in January 2016, Gurji created a WhatsApp class chat group that was a real game changer. Suddenly, the word instant took on a new meaning. In 2018, who even knew that COVID-19 was coming? A decision was taken by Gurji, Belinda, and myself to organize and celebrate our 48th anniversary reunion in the tranquil coastal resort of Morgan Bay. It was truly a very special weekend for us all to be under one roof. It was surreal. Sunday being Mother's Day, the men decided to prepare lunch while the ladies went out to explore Morgan Bay. Preparations started, and I could not help noticing Fridge studiously peeling and chopping up potatoes and mushrooms. Master Chef kitchen it was not. But the boys cooked up a storm, and as usual, Fridge had organized additional food. I am sure there was enough food to feed the whole of Morgan Bay. The special memories that were created in Morgan Bay will forever be etched in our minds. COVID-19 ruined our plans for the 50th anniversary reunion in 2020. But Ashok's visit to South Africa in February 2021 afforded us the opportunity to celebrate our bond again for the last time, as it happens, and appropriately so at Fridge's house in Brankers Hill. Fridge gave us copies of books he wanted us to read. One was a poignant question about what our legacy would be. Well, there is no doubting in his legacy. Of course, Fridge went on to become a very successful scholar and businessman. His character developed and modified as his career blossomed. But its essence remained warm, sincere, and a thorough gentleman. In conclusion, we are better for knowing you, Fridge. May you be blessed in the next life as we were in this life knowing you. May Lord Krishna grant his soul eternal peace and the family the courage and strength to overcome this. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Gentleman. Thanks for taking us down memory lane. I didn't realize that Mrs. Buchner was such a good English teacher. We now have, about a week or 10 days ago, I phoned Purnima Ben to ask her to be a speaker here today. And the first question she posed to me was, must it be in English, Gujarati, Hindi, Kosa? I know she's very versatile. I'll say some more later. Purnima Ben, come along.
Jai Shri Krishna. The list is too long, so I won't be able to say all your names. Karuna, Raben, and the family, Hari family. It is a sad occasion to be here, but at the same time, he is at peace. If he had any illnesses that was not curable, he'd been in and out of hospital a couple of times, then we would have said, why does God exist? He hasn't done anything wrong. He's been such a good man. And on one occasion, he said he was in ICU, and I remember the whole Harry family had arrived. The little ones were running around outside the ICU. And the sister said, whose children are those? I said, no, that's the nursery school children. And then inside I went and I said, they've come from far. They've come to see Mr. Harry. So she says, okay. So they would like to see the grandfather. And at that stage, we thought Fridge will not make it. He was not very well at all. Anyway, so I went in and I said, would you like to see the children? He says, anytime. So I said, well, are you feeling well enough? He says, yes, but they've come to see me. I've got an appointment with them. Anyway, they were all seen. Goodbye was so said. And then the next day he says, you know, Purnima, seize the moment. It is there, they were here, I was here. And I haven't gone yet. And he was really on a borderline case. But he says, I am staying here to see them, and it was meant to be. But he says, thank you for giving me the opportunity. So in small ways, he always found a little niche where he would say, thank you. He would never feel that he's up there. And we all sort of looked at him And the senior nursing sister came up and said, I wonder if this gentleman is going to get better and walk out of here tomorrow. Well, the next day he got discharged home. And he overheard the nursing sister say that. So he says, you did say I wasn't going to go home, but I am going home. My family is waiting for me. Now, it is a sad occasion to be together here on such an occasion where we have to say, please accept my deepest sympathy, a little hug, a little tear, but it does not bring him back. But he's left such beautiful, wonderful memories with us that the moment you see him, that you want to hug him because he was huggable. You must remember it was our height. We're not very tall people. And I must tell you this joke. I got married, and my mother-in-law says, I'm going to take you to a couple of places we have to go because these are seniors. And that time they were living in Southernwood, St. George's Road. So she says, sari, you must put on a sari. So I said, put on a sari and challo and everything nice. I was well-behaved bride. I was only 4 days old in East London. So here we go. Harry dropped us and he says, I'm not coming on any conducted tours because I've got work to do. And he says, you're not working, you go. I went in, and a little while later, Fridge had just come from school. So he comes with, the usual Sun Crush, the orange one. And I said, what's that? He says, that's for you to drink. So I said, thank you. But I said, I don't drink cold drink. He says, we've got plenty of water in the tap. Didn't hesitate, didn't know me. And I said, what is your name, may I ask? And he says, Fridge. I said, what a funny name. And I sort of giggled. So he says, why do you laugh? I said, but that's not a name. Isn't it Vrajlal? I didn't know. I did not know his real name. But I came from Johannesburg, so I said Vrajlal. So he says, you spelt it just the way it's supposed to be. Now spell it. I hadn't spelled it yet. Made me spell it, and I sort of went along. But I said, why do they call you Fridge? He says, my mother must have put me in the fridge by mistake for a while, and I was frozen. and we had a hearty laugh, and I realized this man's got a sense of humor. So every time I met him and I said, any more little giggle jokes? And he says, you don't have to, just ask, and I'll speak out. But it was very spontaneous, full of life. Then he says, can you speak Gujarati? I said, yes. He says, my dada always, late Lallu dada. Now I knew this Foy, Menaben from Johannesburg, but I didn't know this side at all. So I said, have you got any relatives in Johannesburg? He says, plenty, but the most important one is my Foy and my Fua. So gathered that, because just above that, an aunt of mine used to stay. So that was one connection. And he said, every time he says, I'll see you, I'll ask you how my Foy is, because they don't have a telephone. Now comes Fridge to the surgery just to find out. He says, what do you people do here? A teenager, younger than me, comes along and he says, can one sit down here? That was Brayside Road. So he sits there and he says, it's quite comfortable. One can sleep here. So I said, no, it's only for sick people. He says, a false cough. He really put on an act, and you'd think that he's a little, sort of really a sick patient. And he says, no, you got no cough mixture. I said, we don't give cough mixtures without examining. So just then Harry walked in and he says, Harry, how are you? Now he's cross-questioning. Have you also got a cough? He says, a little bit. He says, let's take a cough mixture together. So he was younger, but full of humor. And he wanted to, break the ice, no matter where he was. And as he walked out of the surgery, that time, little coin was big money. Now we get a 10-cent coin, and it doesn't look, yes, they call it brown money. And then they say, that's not money, that's bad luck money. So he always used to carry a handful of coins, and he gave. The children that were sitting in a surgery, it was 2 rows, handed it out, and he says, are you happy? Do you want more? Because I've got a few left over. And he would sort of dish it out. But anyway, coming back to reality now, it's a sad moment. We'll all miss him. He had so much, mountains of knowledge. He was well read and astute, sort of a person. You mention a book, he's read it. Or if he hasn't, he'll say, "May I borrow it?" Tries to get a copy. And then he says, "Right, next book, we'll discuss it. What do you think of the author? Who were the key players?" His interest he never lost. Then I said to him, he says, "Do you speak Gujarati?" I said, "Yes, I've grown up in a Gujarati home." He says, "That's wonderful." He says, "What about Sanskrit?" So I rattled out a verse. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma padeshu kadachana. If you do something, do it with a good heart. Don't expect reward in return. He says, "That's Greek to me." He says, "Don't ever try to teach me Sanskrit." I said, "No, that's just one of the prayers, just like Om Bhurbhura Swaha. We speak it. And then half the people, you ask them, "You've said Om Bhurbhura Swaha. Do you know the meaning?" And he says, "They don't have to know the meaning as long as they say the right word at the right time. When they grow up, they'll be able to grasp it. Then it's a mother's job to teach a child." Now, coming back to the factory, when Fridge took over, but prior to that also, he had a good heart. He saw your pain before you spelt it out. He had time for you. A woman would come in and she'll say, "My husband is drunk, he works for you, but I don't know what to do." She says, "No, send him in, but you can go home." So she says, "But who's going to speak?" "No, we'll sort it out." Eventually, it would lead to a time where he would get a job and he would get also verbal advice. Do this, do that, don't do that. If you do that, you're in trouble. And so many people were hired and made to feel that they were part of the institution. It wasn't just a factory or a printing press. So his habit of reading, and he was an avid reader, an astute learner. I have to find out how this works. Why doesn't it work? That was his attitude. And this is why he excelled and he went up the ladder of success. He never had anger. If he had it at home, Karuna, we don't know. But he had laughter. He always had a smile. And he says, if you want to succeed in life, adopt, adapt, and assimilate. The world is made of people, different people. Children from the same mother, they look different, they think differently, their stature is different. And yet, we find it extremely difficult to sort of put two and two together, that these are all children of the Harry family. Isn't it? Personality is different, likes, dislikes different. One likes potato shack, the other one doesn't want to see it. Clothing is different, mindset is different, and it is a very, very difficult world. We don't know what goes wrong, but definitely no two children are alike. They may have little similarity. So Fritz says, "I'm one of the different kind. I'm a Harrison, but I'm one of a different kind. I will achieve which nobody else has." And he did. And what was most amazing is he couldn't see anybody's pain, agony, and without spelling it out or sort of rubbing your back on, say, "Well, look, don't worry, here's 10 rands, you can go home or buy some fruit or something like that." No, he did it and he carried them right to the end. He provided jobs. He involved the families. So automatically they were assimilated into this big syndicate. But that's not all. When it was time to sort of now retire, and so many faces, I think of all the people that have come and gone. Peter's still lasting. Thank God for that. He's smiling. But, each and every one was so taken up. They had respect for him. But Fridge himself, and I never used to call him Fridge. It's the first time I'm mentioning his name as Fridge. I used to say Vrajlalbhai. He says, "By the time you've said Vrajlalbhai, you'll forget what you were going to say." And I said, "That is quite true, Because you see, now you say, I must call you fridge. And I said, but it was a long time ago you came out of the fridge. Even that joke remained 2-3 days before he went to Johannesburg. There was a meeting in the flat. And I said, how are you, Vrajlalbhai? So he says, here we go again to the old days. When I get back, he says, I want to have a chat with you. Well, he never came back. He left us 3 weeks ago, just over 3 weeks. And time flies, it looks like yesterday. It's 3 weeks have gone. Time will fade. A lot of things will happen in between, and we will remember Fridge. But he will be watching all over us, so we must follow his footsteps. And he always said, the second word is honesty, integrity, and sincerity will carry you also a long way. And teach people that haven't had the background, if they have any little ability to understand English. If not, use Kosa, use our language. Someone somewhere will teach them and say, well, look, my friend, you've got to learn. You've got to get somewhere, get on top. There are quite a few people, he got jobs for them at Wilson's Roundtree because there was no post left at Harrison's. And there was no post there either. So they got there for 2-3 days. No, those bosses they can't even say our name. We want a job here. And they got hired at Harrison's. He made way for them. And by adapting and adopting them as mere workers, because a worker is up down there, boss is up there. This was never the case. They were all on par. And that's how he put bread on the table. Many of them had no food and they came begging. I said, sir, he said, no, I'm smaller than you, so you don't have to say sir. Sir, you only call the teacher at school. But here, I'm just Mr. Harry. And neither of them knew one another. Somebody pointed out, go there. But they were accommodated, adapted, and they felt part of the family. And it has, over a period of years, they have all become one big happy family. One compensates for the other. And even now, recently, one of the members had died, and we said, good God, why? Now the cracks are appearing. But it hasn't. Now the boss is gone. And we will always remember Vrajlal. And we will say, just come down if you have a problem. He'll sort it out. He never had anger. And with the patience that he had, he could solve it. He had people on his right, you know, Peter, and Mr. Chetty. Mahabir. And, you know, it was so beautiful. It was like one happy family. It's still running. And I sincerely hope, wish all the good luck to the Harry family that we will get there. That was his motto. And you mention a poem and he would finish it for you. I see you've got Khalil Gibran's works and all that, but he read so much and being, you know, enthusiastic in his work because he started off with positive attitude. I will, I can, I must, and so will you, his finger. And I said, do you ever get angry? He says, anger is a word that doesn't exist in my dictionary. It shouldn't. Problems can be solved and sorted out. If not, find a way out, but not with anger. But thank you very much for listening. I am not an East Londoner, but you know, when I found that fridge came out of a fridge, and I said, please don't change your name. Vrajlal it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Purna, for the great story and especially the witticism. You're a marvelous speaker, indeed. Talking about fridge and Vrajlal and all that, last night when my sister phoned from Cape Town, she said, make sure you don't say fridge. You must say Virgil or Vrajlal. I said, well, you know, we're so used to saying fridge, it may just slip on from the tongue or whatever. Yeah. Our next speaker is a very, very close friend and confidant of Vrajlalbhai. He's been associated for many years. And that person, of course, is Chagan by Chiba. And Mr. Chiba owned an outfitting shop for many years. He retired. But like me, we can't sit still. We're always on the go. And he's a social animal like myself. And therefore, he was working part-time at Harry's. He's got lots of money. He's not worried about the money. He's worried about interaction with people. He loves people. And he was there right until last year. But even when he retired, I think February last year or something like that. But he said, no, he went back for this and he went back for that. That's the man, and he's got great experience. And I'm sure we're going to hear lots about his interaction and association with Vrajlalbhai.
Namaste, Guruji, Harry family, and invited guest. Unlike what Mr. Kandu say, it's not like that. I don't have so much to say, you know. What I want to say, my friendship with Vrajlalbhai spanned over 45 years. We had a lot to share. We traveled in South Africa. We shared a lot of incidents and in business and personal. So it was more that I may have been older than him, but I learned more from him. He was really, really, if I may term it, as a trailblazer. In many ways, you could talk anything and he would have the right answer at the right time. In the early days, I managed Modern Man and with the Harry family, and I had to liaison with him. And it's then that I really realized the potential he had and the knowledge and that all what I could pick up from him. His generosity, as I learned as we went along, really went big. He was very generous, whether it came to organizations, schools, right down to individuals. He never said no for anything. In fact, I used to feel shy sometimes. There's some people used to ask me, you work at Harry's, ask them and just get this, get that, I said, look, Harry's gives so much to so many people, I'm not going to ask anymore. His contribution to the community can't be underestimated. Many years ago of the society, I was the chairperson, and him and Vrajlalbhai and Tinker were our treasurers, and we embarked on a huge project to raise money for the society. And I must say, at that time, he really went out of his way, spent a lot of time, contributed a lot in different ways. And eventually, we raised the money to build this very hall that you're sitting in today. And to me, that was a big success, having him in our team to raise this money. On a little humorous note, I have to share something with you. There were a lot of things we did, and laughter and sadness and good and that. And one of the incidents, one day we were sitting and he said, we don't play any sport, we should do something. And I said, like what? And he said, no, what about golf? And what he did is he had a friend at his London Golf Club who called us over for a lesson. And I was a bit, not so in favor and doubtful, but eventually I went along and we went to the golf club, and anyway, we were ready there, and instructor was there, ready to tee off and everything. And we stood there, and the instructor was behind us, and Vrajlalbhai swung. I was standing there, and all I said, watch out. And what he did, he swung his club and it swung back and he hit the instructor in the knee. And I said, oh my God, I said, what's going to happen now? Fortunately, he wasn't so hurt. But let me tell you, that was our last lesson for golf. We never went back again. Okay. To Karuna, Naina, Poonam, Priya, Nitesh, and Bhavesh, I will always be there for your support. Whether I'm here or whether I'm away, just remember, at any time I'm just there. I want to end this short speech with a little poem that I thought carries so much depth. And this is what it is. Those we love don't go away. They walk beside us every day. Unseen, unheard, but always near. Still loved, still missed, and very dear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charanbhai. Before I call my next speaker, I just want to mention that when I invited all the speakers here, I did not rig anything. There's a very strong John Bisica flavor here. The only person that hasn't been with John Bisica is Deepak because he's from KZN. Then we also have, next to Guruji there, we have Dhiran. He's too young to have been at Bisica, so he went to East London High. Okay. But otherwise, everyone else, including myself, attended Bisica, and I taught there, and I ended up being the principal in 2004, retired. So it's my 18th year now of retirement. Our next speaker is a high flyer, figuratively and literally. She just came back from P this morning, and tomorrow she's out, jetting out again. And she's from my matric class of 1974. She is involved with gender-based violence, not involved in causing it, but she's trying to help and protect, you see. And she's doing fantastic work, so great work that Fort Hare University has honored her, and she was conferred an honorary degree. So she's Dr. Leslie Ann Foster. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have to say that coming here feels like I'm coming home because I know so many of you. I've grown up in front of so many of you. And my association with Vrij and the Harry family goes back to St. George's Road when I was in primary school visiting the home. And my earliest memories of the family, also of the shop in North End, no one mentioned that. It was a big enterprise that, serviced the whole community. And I remember Vrij then, also having his stint and honing his early business skills in that way. I have many memories of Vrij because in my business, my gender-based violence business, he often was a mentor and a guide. When I started out, I went to him for freebies, asked him to print pamphlets for the work that I was doing and brochures, and he did it gladly and willingly. Later on, he came to share ideas and provide guidance to me, including helping me to shape my finance department. Learned a lot about integrity and honesty from him. But I also want to remember him from the family perspective, because I know how committed he was to his family, very committed. And I remember coming to the house here in Vrajlalbhai often, and he would always welcome me into the home, make sure I sit down, make sure I have something to eat. I used to chat with his mom a lot and, visit with his sister-in-law and sisters, Karuna's sister, remember her very, very well. And he took that responsibility of family very, very strongly. Some people don't have to do that or don't want to do that, but Vrij made it his business to see that everybody in the family who was in need, and I'm thinking of his nieces now, he was there for them. He stayed with them to marry them off and see that they, were well taken care of. And one of the most beautiful things I think he ever did was when his nephew Pravish wanted to have a trip overseas, which was nearly impossible for a disabled young man. But he made it possible. He took the time to actually take him and struggled with him all over Europe to take him on that and give him that experience that he wanted. For me, that shows the generosity of his spirit. It showed his ability, his compassion, and his loving kindness. Know that it was very deep in his family, but that story always, stood out for me because I was like, how do you do that? It's just so difficult. And I had a disabled brother, as you all know, for many years with Roger. So I know what that experience was like to try and move people from one place. He did not see it as a challenge. He never saw difficulties in his life as a challenge he could not meet. So for me, I also think that what was very important about Vrij was that he was a visionary. He was no ordinary person. He was a visionary. And he had a vision for his business, a vision for his family, a vision for his community and his society. And to say that is amazing because you can work, you can manage, you can do things, but to be a visionary means that you have to work consultatively, you have to work to build, collective responses to what's needed. In the most recent past, Vrij approached me and told me that he was very deeply struck by the poor education of young people today. It was a burden that was very heavy on his heart. And he said, I've been applying my mind to think of how can we change this around? How can we change the youth of today that are coming out of schools and universities less educated than they should be? And his idea, his vision was to bring together the old retired teachers with young mavericks and to get them to start an institution that could help with really educating young people today. And that was his vision, his most recent vision. And I know that he also started to work on that because he spoke to me, asked me if I would come into it. He spoke to several other people that I know and said, please, let's get together and do, this work. So I saw Vrij, I learned a lot from him because I'm in the human rights field, and human rights means that you restore the dignity and respect of every human being, that you give people opportunities, and that you treat people equally. And Vrij did that in every area of his life. He was about keeping the dignity and respect of people. He was about equality. He wanted people to be trained in the same way. He wanted people to give them the opportunity. And I mean, many speakers have spoken about how people rose from being cleaners to being managers. I have done that because of what Vrij did. So he was, as Chaganbai said, a trailblazer in his day. And he did all of these amazing things. He was a leader with compassion, a leader that was generous, a leader that was thoughtful, and a leader that was sensitive to the needs of his people, but always humble. And there's nothing more powerful than that. Book by Robert Greenleaf speaks about servant leadership. And I believe that Vrij was a servant leader in his day because you never heard about what status he held or what he was doing. It was never a public thing out there, but quietly he was working with people. Quietly, he was growing people. Quietly, he was contributing to his community. And that's true servant leadership. I also heard stories this week when we were talking about Fridge in my office about how he used to tell stories in the mandir to the children when he was very young. And the kids loved listening to his stories. And all of his stories had a moral to it. It had something that the children had to learn from. And even the adults used to like listening to the stories because they were learning something from that. So in that, he was building the moral fiber and character of those children, because that's how they learn, is the stories that they hear in the early years. So I think for me, I always think, I used to meet Fridge and Peter sometimes on trips going overseas, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? Now we're going to look at new machines. And I thought also, I learned from him that leadership is not a solo trip. It's about who else learns from you and who else you take on that leadership role. Because one day you have to step aside. One day you are no longer going to be there. And there must be people in your second line that are able to take over from you. And I learned from Fridge that that was he was doing. And it's something that I very much do as I go through my leadership journey. One of the most amazing things about his life, and I don't know how many of you have thought about this, is that when Fridge sadly passed away 3 weeks ago, he was in Johannesburg, and I love that photograph he took of with his grandsons at 6:30 in the morning, just before he passed. I mean, it just showed his connection and love of the family. But everybody in his family was gathered at that time to celebrate Karuna's mum's 90th birthday. And he passed with all of them being there to honor him. Even as I say it, I get shivers down my spine to think, how beautiful is that? And what a testimony to the man he was. I mean, it's just everybody was there. Everybody could pay their respects. Everybody could honor him. It doesn't happen to just anybody. People had traveled from overseas to be there. They were there in the moment to pay their respects and to honor him. And I think we have to, as a family, you have to really celebrate that his contribution to family, to community, to society is embodied in the fact that everybody was there to celebrate his life. And all of us here today to remember him. Fridge was very political, and he was a political activist from a young age. My mom, who taught at John Bisseke, had a group of students that she was politicizing, and he was one of them. And one of the amazing things he did was that he started a magazine called Probe Magazine, which was an anti-apartheid strategy to address the inequality, the injustices that were happening to Black people at the time. And they published important articles. Leslie Klingwa was the editor at the time. Errol Theron was there. Quite a few people that we know were working and taking what they knew to spread information around. That was his intellectual contribution to the political activism of the day. Then they started to be noticed by the authorities, and there was a lot of negative press spread about them, and the sponsors withdrew, and then they had to close it down. But not before they made a seminal contribution to thought leadership, to activism, and to protest against the injustices of the time. Fridge was a thought leader of note because he studied so much, because he did such a lot of work, and he brought back the intelligence that he garnered from around the world to share with everyone else, so that everybody else was lifted up. So his whole life was about lifting people up, lifting your thinking, lifting the way you framed what you do, lifted up your strategies and your activism. So from where I stand and from what I know about Vraj, he must be remembered for a really seminal contribution to this community. In his own industry, he was a thought leader. In his own industry, he was a visionary. He came up with the most amazing ideas. I remember one time he offered me to develop a database of all the connections I had around the world and how I could send letters out to them. That vision was too big for me. I couldn't at the time embrace it. I understand it now, but he was like light years ahead of anybody else in his industry coming up with these ideas. So today I really pay respects to Vraj, because and to his family, you know, for everything they've been able to, they've had to sacrifice a lot of his time, but for allowing him to make the contributions he did. Karuna was also on one of the boards of the shelter that we have, and she herself made such a big contribution as a psychologist to the work of the people, you know, that were with us. And he opened also up and blessed that, you know, the ability for her to come and do that work. So he was very generous in so many different ways. But I really am grateful for having known him. And I think if anybody can say, you know, that he, and appreciate what he did, then all of us can. All of us can, for the visionary he was, for the extremely generous person he was. And I hear so many stories of how he would just step in and help people in the community that didn't even ask for help, but that he perceived to need that kind of help. The other thing about him that was amazing was his spirituality. Vraj worked from a place of his connection with the divine. It wasn't a material, physical kind of thing. He was absolutely divinely guided and protected. And I think for me, that is a true leader, because then your leadership becomes about the people and not about yourself. And what I've seen and what I've heard here today, it's been amazing. That's been an amazing journey, an amazing legacy that he leaves behind. So to all of his children, you are building on a very strong foundation. And having been the father that he was, I know you will take up that leadership and continue the journey as best you can. And I thank you for all of that. I just want to say, Guruji, I'm one of your biggest fans on your Facebook page. I hope you know that. And I like your storytelling. Try my best to listen in as often as I can. But thank you. And thank you to the community for having me today.
Thank you, Leslie, for that power speech. I wouldn't expect anything less than that from you. I'd just like to add that in the matric class of 74, where Leslie, of which she formed part of, Vrajlal's sister, Rama, was in the same class as her. I now come to the next speaker, Dhiren Naran. He is our chairperson of the East London Hindu Society, extremely hard worker. He doesn't mind getting his hands dirty, and he does a lot of work and seva for us here in East London. Dhiren Bhai.
Jai Shri Krishna, Namaste, everybody. On behalf of the East London Hindu Society, we thank the Hari family for allowing us to host this memorial service in remembrance of Vrajlalbhai Hari. Vrajlalbhai was a truly inspiration and devoted member of the East London Hindu Society. His contribution to East London Hindu Society is immeasurable, whilst also doing so with a pleasant smile and a friendly demeanor. Many speak of his business savvy and entrepreneurial spirit, which is quite evident in the success he enjoyed. However, from the East London Hindu Society perspective, he was a deeply religious person and had a great love and warmth for the organization. I say this because personally, I've had little interaction with Vrajlalbhai, but as part of the East London Hindu Society executive, we have had many interactions where I witnessed his warmth that he openly displayed. It's not an easy task volunteering as we do. However, Vrajlalbhai placed a large amount of faith and confidence in us as a trustee to do the right thing and to do our tasks to the best of our abilities. As an auditor, though, he did the checks and saw that the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. And this taught us the importance of carrying out our duty. He often quoted apt extracts from the Bhagavad Gita, which displayed his in-depth religious knowledge absorbed herefrom. I'd like to highlight the following recent issue that we experienced. We have a WhatsApp group amongst the executive trustees, and Guruji is included in that WhatsApp group. On the 7th of June, we encountered a problem wherein we were advised at short notice that we may not have community members available to run the Sunday morning mandir in Guruji's absence. Naturally, we shared this message in the group, seeking assistance from the trustees, using their years of wisdom and experience in this field. I'll quote Vrajlalbhai's response. It's available in black and white. Namaste all. The Sunday morning mandir is very important for our children and community. Many years ago, I, together with others, used to run the Sunday morning mandir. I am prepared to take on this task as seva. I will appreciate a few helpers. Also, when I'm out of town, we will need someone to take over. I will prepare a story and anything else that will be needed to assist. When can we have a small meeting to discuss? Can we meet at my house? I have some storybooks for children and other stuff that can be used to make the Sunday Children's Mandir more interesting. I can share this with any interested members. Let's start a dialogue, end quote. The points that stand out for me in this short response are the following. The Sunday morning mandir is very important for our children and community. I am prepared to take on this task as seva. Can we meet at my home? And let us start a dialogue. From these points, we can see the love and warmth for the East London Hindu Society and the mandir specifically coming through. At that age, he was still prepared to roll up his sleeves and share his time, knowledge, his home for the benefit of our children and community. We have many community members with equal knowledge and time, but we don't see or hear from them. I implore you, our elders, to take a leaf from Vrajlalbhai's book and get in contact with East London Hindu Society executives or trustees in order to share your knowledge and experiences and help shape our community and hold on to our culture and dharma. Another very important lesson from this brief message is that we should seize the moment and live life in the present, as tomorrow is not guaranteed. We've managed to resolve the Sunday morning matter through dialogue and understanding, and we are pleased to say, without Vrajlalbhai's calm and guidance, this could have taken a very different direction. We are here today with deep sadness in our hearts, but all trying to feel honored and special for knowing the amazing person Vrajlalbhai was. We trust his warmth, sincerity, and determination will be an inspiration to us all. Namaste.
Thank you, Dhirenbhai, for those kind words. According to the program, we actually completed with the speakers, but we have one last speaker who hails from Southernwood, close family friend of the Harrys, and always supply the Harry factory with good food for any and every function. I'll ask Niruben Carson to just say a few words, please.
Thank you, Ramanbhai. Good afternoon to one and all. Just excuse me because my speech is going to be in my mother language. પ્રેમ નમસ્તે, જય શ્રી કૃષ્ણ. વડીલો, ભાઈઓ, બહેનો અને બાળકો, વ્રજરાલભાઈ વિશે પોતાના વિચાર રજૂ કરવાની તક મળી તે બદલ આભારી છું. વ્રજલાલભાઈની દોસ્તી નાનપણથી મારા દિયરો સાથે સાદરનૂરમાં હતી. દર શનિવારે બપોરે આવતા અને કિચનમાં બેસીને વાતો કરતા. વર્ષ પસાર થવા લાગ્યા. એ સર્વે દોસ્તો અલગ યુનિવર્સિટીમાં ગયા, છતાં તોય રજામાં ભેગા થતા. પ્રેલનમાં ઘરો બંધાયા. લહરી પરિવાર નવા ઘરમાં રહેવા આવ્યા. 1987માં વ્રજલાલભાઈ ત્યારે સોસાયટીના ખજાનચી હતા. તે સમયે વધુ બાળકોની સંખ્યા હોવાથી ગુજરાતી શાળા માટે શિક્ષિકાની જરૂર હતી. વ્રજલાલભાઈએ મારા પર ફોન કર્યો, શિક્ષિકાનું પદ વિશે જણાવ્યું, સોસાયટી પર પત્ર લખવા માટે કહ્યું. રક્ષાબંધનના દિને આઉટસ્કટ માટે ગાડી અને ડ્રાઈવર મોકલતા. ડ્રાઈવરનું નામ મેક્સવેલ હતું. આજે તેમને પણ યાદ કરીએ છીએ. મહિલા મંડળની પ્રમુખ શ્રી 2006માં મેં પદ સ્વીકાર્યું. વડીલ માતાઓએ અભિલાષા હતી મંડળનો બ્રોશર રજૂ કરવો. બ્રોશર તૈયાર થતા સમય લાગ્યો. હેરિસ પ્રિન્ટર્સે બ્રોશર છપ્યો. બ્રોશરની રકમ માટે વ્રજરાલભાઈ સાથે અપોઇન્ટમેન્ટ કરવામાં આવ્યો. તે વખતે કોઈ પણ કાર્યવાહકો ન આવ્યા. વ્રજલાલભાઈ અને કરુણાબેન ઓફિસમાં હતા. વ્રજલાલભાઈએ જણાવ્યું, બ્રોશરના 22,000 બ્રોશરની રકમ છે. અને તરત જ બોલ્યા, 22,000 મહિલા મંડળને ભેટ. તે પણ તે તેમના પરિવાર તરફથી છે. મારું હૈયું ભરાઈ ગયું. વ્રજલાલભાઈ અને કરુણાબેન ગલે લાગ્યા. આજના વખતમાં આવા મહાન માનવ ઓછા છે. એક ભજનમાં શબ્દ છે, રૂડી રીતે જીવો જગમાં, રૂડા કરજો કામ, સાચા દિલથી સેવા કરતા દિશે મારા રામ. જર કમર જેવા બની સંસારમાં રહેજો, અમર રહેશે નામ. વ્રજલાલભાઈએ સાચા દિલથી સેવા કરતા હતા. ઇતિહાસમાં વ્રજલાલભાઈનું નામ રહેશે. શ્રી કૃષ્ણને હૃદયથી પ્રાર્થ્ય વ્રજલાલભાઈના આત્માને સદગતિ અને મોક્ષ મળે. પરમાત્મા તેમના પરિવારને દુઃખ સહન કરવા માટે શક્તિ આપે. એ જ મારી પ્રાર્થના. ઓમ શાંતિ. હરિઓમ તત્સત. નમસ્તે. થેન્ક યુ.
Thank you so much, Nirvan. I now call upon the local Sai group to do a Stuti part. Pratna, you can come in front here. Stay with you. Okay.
ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनात् मृत्योर्मुक्ष्यमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनात् मृत्योर्मुक्ष्यमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनात् मृत्योर्मुक्ष्यमामृतात् ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति
The Sai group for prayer purposes, the satsangs and so on. We have come to the end of the speeches. I now call upon the youngest daughter of Vrajlalbhai, Priya Harry, to pass the vote of thanks.
Namaste, everyone, and thank you all so much for taking the time to be here today to celebrate the life of my Babaji. And it's a special thank you to all of the people sitting here who shared their memories and stories of him. And especially thank you to Nirbin for sharing in Gujarati. I know that he would often lament that as the generations have gone down, we've spoken less and less Gujarati, always trying to encourage us to speak it more, encouraging my Ajima to speak it to us so that we can keep the language alive. A few days after my Babaji passed away, I had been scrolling social media and I saw that the New Yorker magazine had shared an article by the Indian author V.S. Naipaul. And he had written an essay about grief, talking about 3 instances of death that had left an impact on him, including the death of his father when he was a young man. And in there he says, love makes memories and life precious. The grief that comes to us is proportionate to that love and is inescapable. And from all the memories that people have been sharing and from all the grief that people have been expressing to us from all over and so abundantly, what is very clear is that my Babaji was very, very well loved. And that is a great source of comfort to us in these difficult times. My Babaji was fortunate, my Foye mentioned yesterday when she spoke that they were blessed to grow up in a very spiritual household. They had knowledge at their fingertips in the form of their grandfather, in their father and their uncle. And I think that they all feel that it is part of their duty to share that faith. And that's why the Hindu society was such an important part of their lives. His father and grandfather and uncle were all instrumental in bringing the community together, in creating it, in putting together the funds for the mandir and for the hall, and for encouraging the growth of this collection of people who come together to celebrate the Hindu Dharma and to educate the youth about it and to keep it alive. And I think that was why he was so dedicated to the Sunday program. And he would use his stories to share. And I think all of us sitting here can say that part of the reason why we continue to practice our faith and why we understand it is from what was taught to us in this community, in this mandir. But the society is, it's more than just about faith and a celebration of the Hindu Dharma. It is a community of people who have come together and we come together to celebrate, but more especially, they come together in a time of grief. And I don't think that there is any other community that is so supportive of members when somebody passes away as our Hindu community. And we felt it not just here when my Babaji passed away. We were in Joburg, and normally we would know exactly who to call upon to observe rites, to get things started. But even though we were in Joburg, we felt that support because the community was there to support us. They pulled together for him, and everything was handled with as little disturbance to all of us who were, so much feeling our grief at that time. And I just want to again extend a thank you to the Joburg community there, to Naina's father-in-law and Elisha's family, and to the Joburg community there who were there to support us during that very difficult time. And then we came home and our East London community was here waiting for us to offer all of their love and support to everyone who brought food, who handled things for us while we were busy, who came in quietly and did things without being asked. We are so very grateful to all of you. And we know that it is also a tribute to my Babaji and also to my Ba and to what the family has done. And we just want to again say, thank you to all of you. Our bhajans that we sing during the funeral times remind us that the Atma is eternal and that when somebody dies, they carry on and we must celebrate that life because their journey is now out of our hands and they return to the divine. But for those of us who are here, we know that the ones our loved ones who are gone, are never truly gone. They are here in the things they did and the memories that people have of them. And what is clear from everything that people have shared is that my Babaji will be well remembered. And as difficult as this time has been, it's also been a time for us to learn all the different things about him that we didn't always know. And we look forward to continuing this sharing of his legacy and to carrying it on in ourselves, to being true to the values that he held so dearly. Thank you also for all the prarthnas, all the prayers, all the kind thoughts, wishes, and love for the continued health of my mom, for the health and just well-being of our family during this difficult time. We carry it with us and we are very, very grateful. Before you all leave, we have created memory books where we are asking people to share their remembrances and thoughts of my Babaji, and it's there on the front next to Guruji. So please do share your messages. And thank you again to everyone for coming. for taking this time to be with us. Namaste.
Thank you, Priya. So while some people are busy signing that book there, the others can start with the refreshments at the back, well deserved after 2 hours. So it's open to you. Thank you.